half a minute of invitation to the divine and then start. How many of the students have read some Upanishad, like read Upanishad, tried to understand it? किसने किया है अभी तक कोई पढ़ाई करी है कोई उपनिषद की? Yeah, students?
Not exactly, ma'am, read one, ma'am, but if the shlokas came while understanding any meaning of the shloka which was similar to it, so ma'am, then we chanced upon them.
Yes, and lot of shlokas are there in your Deva Bhasha, right? From class 1 up to class 8, there, every year I had added some Vedic verses, some Upanishadic and some Gita, so that our children know that there are these Upanishads, and I'm so glad.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Upanishads are probably the highest and the best literature of India from the earliest times to the present day. They are records of knowledge with much greater clarity than the Vedas. Why is there greater clarity? Because they are not so symbolic. And the Upanishads are superb poetry. What is a good poetry? When the meter, the rhythm, the arrangement of words, the style, the substance, all of it matches each other. All of it is in synchronicity with each other. To judge any poetry, we have to be able to first judge the substance of the poetry. How is the poetry? What is the substance of the poetry? Does the style of the poetry match the substance of the poetry? Right? There should be harmony between the substance and the style. For example, there is a poetry on Maharana Pratap. Obviously, it has to be written in the Veer Ras. So, the rhythm of the poetry must be of greatest value. Someday, he will invite Sampatji and he will talk to us on Chand Vigyan. It's a beautiful Vigyan that our rishis took out then. And Sampatji speaks very, very interestingly on Chand Vigyan. Let me invite him one day. So, the Upanishads are the highest and the best poetry of India. Now, what does Upanishad mean? Upanishad. Upa means near and Nishad means to sit. So Upanishad means knowledge which is received by sitting at the feet of an enlightened person. And the second meaning of Upanishad is that which dispels darkness. Right? You know that beautiful verse for a guru? Agyana timirandhasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshu unmilitam yena tasmai shri guruve namah. Who is the guru? Oh Guru, I, blinded by the darkness of ignorance, had my eyes opened by the Guru, who passed through my eyes the kajal or the collyrium of knowledge. Now, the Guru, who can be the Guru? These texts can be our Guru. Sri Aurobindo says in the Synthesis of Yoga, first chapter, he says the true Guru is our soul. And the job of a seeker is to find this Guru within, connect with this Guru within, offer to this Guru within, and invite the Guru outside. And then the true knowledge dawns upon us when we are connected with the real Guru, who is our soul. There are approximately 100 Upanishads. I'm not really sure about how many total Upanishads there are, but there are 12 principal Upanishads. The Isha is the most important. Isha, Kena, Katha Upanishad, Brihadaranya Upanishad, Prashna Upanishad, Taittiriya Upanishad, Aitreya Upanishad, Mundaka, Mandukya, Kaivalya, Nilarudra. We should be aware of these names at least. So if sometimes somebody speaks about them, we shouldn't feel कि अरे हमें तो मालूम ही नहीं है what these terms are. We are Indians and the highest knowledge of India is in these Upanishads. So we should at least be aware of the names. Now, what are the Upanishads? The Upanishads are separate sections which have been chosen from the end of the different Vedas. Mostly 3 Vedas. The Rig Veda, the Sam Veda, and the Yajur Veda, mostly. That is why the Upanishads are called Vedanta, that which comes at the end of the Vedas. Now, where does the Isha Upanishad come from? Isha Upanishad is the essence of all Upanishads. It is such an essence that Sri Aurobindo has said, if all the literature of India was not available to us, and only the first verse of Isha Upanishad was available to us, then even that would be able to take us to the highest knowledge. Such is the importance of Isha Upanishad. Just 18 verses. And this is what Sri Aurobindo has said for the first verse. Now, Isha Upanishad is from the last chapter of Shukla Yajurveda. And the seer of Isha Upanishad is believed to be Rishi Yagyavalkya. Now, Isha Upanishad is Sri Aurobindo's first love. As he progressed in his sadhana, he kept coming back to it. He has written a number of commentaries on the Isha Upanishad. Why has he written so many commentaries on Isha Upanishad? Other Upanishads, he's taken some part of it, some bit. He couldn't complete all the Upanishads, but Isha Upanishad, he went on writing. He would come back and again write more. The reason that he kept coming back to Isha Upanishad is that it is closest to his own philosophy. One may ask now that what is there in the Isha Upanishad that comes so close to Sri Aurobindo's philosophy? See, the Isha Upanishad is one text which accords equal importance to manifestation, which is the Kshara, and to the unmanifest, the Akshara. Isha Upanishad explains that Akshara and Kshara both have equal importance. Unfortunately, the normal trend of today's Vedanta is to regard the permanent, the immutable, the unchanging, the unmanifest, the timeless Akshara as a superior reality, and the changing, phenomenal, mutable as an inferior, not only an inferior, but it is sometimes called an illusion. Ye sab to maya hai. But this is not right. For example, if you have the potential to sing and you have the potential to keep quiet, not sing, both have potentialities. Your not singing is an equal potentiality to your potentiality of being able to sing. The Purushottama, when he does not manifest, he is Akshara. When he manifests, he is Kshara. But both are his potentialities. He is equal in both. At the same time, Purushottama is Akshara. At the same time, Purushottama is Kshara. Now, the Isha Upanishad is a text which takes us from experience to a deeper experience to a deeper experience. It is a text which takes us from light to a greater light to a greater light. But when does it do this? It does this when it is approached with the silence of our being. There has to be silence in our being. There has to be a prayer and aspiration in our being that, oh Lord, oh God, I invite thee into this process of trying to understand Isha Upanishad. Let thy will be done. You let me be able to understand. So, Isha Upanishad actually takes us to the experience of that oneness, that unity, which is underlying this whole universe. There is a unity. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyevanu pashyati. And these experiences are much, much, much more important than trying to understand each word, each expression. It's good to get into it. But even if you don't get it, what is important is to be able to experience the Isha Upanishad so that through the door of the Isha Upanishad, you are able to reach the light of oneness, the light of unity, that oneness which is underlying this whole manifestation, right? Isha Upanishad has 18 verses, which can be divided into 4 parts. The first part is the first 3 verses, which we are going to do today. The second part is the next 4 verses. And then the third part is the next 7 verses. And the last is the last 4 verses. The first part deals with the science and the art of living, which is appropriate for all of us, because all of us need to know how to live our life. What is the science of living? Actually, the Upanishad, Isha Upanishad, and the other Upanishads, Isha especially, they've been vehicles of illumination. They're not vehicles of instruction. They cannot be explained. They can be experienced. And they were more composed for seekers who already had a general familiarity with the Vedas, the Vedic verses, with Vedanta, and even some personal experiences of the truth. So, why am I saying that they are meant for such people? Because the Upanishadic verses, they have this something called dispense transition. Dispense transition means they'll state something, then they'll state something, then they'll state something, they'll state something. There is no connection between the first statement and the second, no connection between the second and third, no connection between the third and fourth. This is called dispensed transition. I'll give you an example. Like in the Vedas, the Rishi says, Sa kamayet ekoham bahusyam. He desired. He means God. May I become many. Now, all the transition between the first statement and the second statement have been dispensed with. Nahi hai. Who is he? How could he desire? How did he become aware that he can become many? All these things have been completely dispensed with because the rishis who put the Upanishads together, they felt ye sab to inko malum hoga. Right? What is the central idea of Isha Upanishad? The central idea of the Isha Upanishad is that it is a reconciliation. It is a harmony. Harmony between two fundamental opposites. And दोनों opposites को synthesize किया है ईशा उपनिषद ने. Not one, but many opposites have been synthesized, have been harmonized, have been reconciled in the Isha Upanishad. See, God and the world. Now, there are people who say that the world is a Maya, God is real. But here, the Isha Upanishad reconciles and brings the reconciliation between God and the world. Does a reconciliation between renunciation and enjoyment. If you renounce, you can't enjoy. If you enjoy, you cannot renounce. No. The Isha Upanishads, you can renounce and you can enjoy. There can be action and yet there can be freedom. That is the Sthita Pragya, who is free from inside and his outer being is in full action. The one and the many, they are not different. The one who has become the many, being and its becomings, right? The passive divine impersonality, that Brahman which is passive, which doesn't move. And the same Brahman is the active divine personality. Then the Isha Upanishad has reconciled knowledge and ignorance. 3 verses have been given to knowledge and the ignorance. And 3 verses have been given to becoming and non-becoming. And there is a reconciliation between life on earth and the supreme immortality. Immortality bhi kisi din hum log samjhenge. Immortality doesn't have to happen after death. The real immortality is when we have become immortal while we are living. Jivan Mukta jisko kehte hain. Now, before we begin, I want to ask you all, should I go ahead? Was it very difficult? Or was it okay? Are there any questions? Okay. Then we'll start with the first verse. So the first verse of Isha Upanishad, Isha Vasyamidam Sarvam Yat Kincha Jagatyam Jagat Tena Tyaktena Bhunjitha Ma Gridah Kasya Svidhanam. Sri Aurobindo explains it. All this is for habitation by the Lord. Whatsoever is individual universe of movement in the universal motion, by that renounced, thou shouldest enjoy. Lust not after any man's possession. So what we'll take on first is the first line. Isha vasya midam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat. All this is for habitation by the Lord. Whatsoever is individual universe of movement in the universal motion. Right? Like we gave you the example that there is a river which is flowing. Now in the river, there are many eddies. whirlpool, जिसको भंवर कहते हैं. These are the individual movements. There is one that is the flow of the river. Together with that, there are individual whirlpools which are flowing at their own speed, but the flow of the river is going together with that, right? So all these movements are happening together. There is a dharma of the flow of the river, and there is an individual dharma of each eddy. But if each eddy realizes that it is part of the river, that is what they're saying, that there is a universal movement and there is an individual movement. All these concentric movements are inhabited by the Lord. Isha Vasya Midam Sarvam Yat Kincha Jagatyam Jagat. All these concentric movements, they are inhabited by the Lord. The Lord has entered into them. There is a Lord of existence about whom many times a question is raised. Does God exist? Oh, this is a supreme question which has been asked throughout history. And this Upanishad declares that not only does God exist, but he inhabits every little portion of the whole universe, the microcosm as well as the macrocosm. There is nowhere where he is not, right? Jagatyam Jagat. He is Isha. He is master of the universe. Therefore, everything belongs to him. This is the basic premise. And the art of life flows from this premise that all this belongs to the divine and the divine lives inside it. Isha Vasya Midam Sarvam. Everything belongs to him and he lives inside it. He has become all this and then he has entered into it. He is present in just everything. And so, even if we try to possess something for ourselves, we will not succeed. Why will we not succeed? Because everything we can enjoy. Everything exists around us and in the world. Everything belongs to the divine and the divine is within us. All this, the divine is entered into it. Now, in this, Adi Shankaraji explains it in another manner. He says that we must lose the sense of the unreal objective universe, that this universe is unreal. And we should lose the sense of the unreal objective of universe. And what should we have a soul perception of? We should have a soul perception of only the pure Brahman. So when you understand the first line in the terms of Adi Shankara, then there is a contradiction in the whole Upanishad. There is no reconciliation. Where is the essential unity of the being and the becoming? If the becoming is separate and it is a maya, it is an illusion, there is no reconciliation. That is the problem. There is no reconciliation between the opposites, right? When we go to Adi Shankara's explanation. Now, not only is this vast inhabited by the Lord, even the manifest, the minutest in the manifest is inhabited by the Lord. He is not equally present in all. He is wholly present in all. Let's read it. Not only the vast is inhabited by the Lord, even the manifest, the minutest in the manifest is inhabited by the Lord. He is not equally present. He is equally present in the snake, in the insect, in the bird, in the animal. He is not equally present. He is wholly present. All of him is in the snake. All of him is wholly in the bird. All of him is in the plant. All of it is in you and me. That is the meaning of Purnamada Purnamidam. Now, this contradiction that all this is Maya, is an illusion, it flies in the face of the general trend that this world is a place. This contradiction means that if the divine is here within all, then this contradiction flies in the face of the general trend that this world is one place from where one needs to get out of at the earliest. We don't need to get out of it. We need to make it so beautiful Our life, you need to make it so beautiful by connecting with the soul within us and then letting that soul work itself out in all that we are experiencing in the world. We need to connect the manifest and the unmanifest, and that is what the Isha Upanishad does. Isha Upanishad, on the contrary, emphasizes on the underlying unity of this manifested phenomena and the eternal immutable reality. There is a eternal immutable reality, the Akshara, and there is this manifested. And the Isha Upanishad synthesizes the two and says that both are realities and both are equal realities. The impersonal is always inactive. The personality always has the potentiality of action. And Purushottama is both, right? So, immortality in the Upanishad is not deathlessness. That if I can never die, I become a Chiranjeevi, that is not immortality. And immortality does not have to come to us after death. Immortality is to be living, but we should be rooted and in union with the immortal self within, with the immortal self who is everywhere. And just in awareness of that immortal self does not mean that we have reached the state of immortality. आज हमने डिस्कस कर लिया, हमको पता चल गया कि वो इमोर्टल सेल्फ हमारे अंदर भी है, सब जगह है, नॉलेज है, एक्सपीरियंस नहीं है. Then we have not reached that state. I remember once a friend used to come for the Gita talks at home, and she says, "But I'm immortal. I know it. I've become immortal." I said, "Then you should stop coming to the classes because there was just no opening." The opening is when you realize that, nahi, I know that what is immortality, but I have not reached that state of samatha, that state of oneness, that state of unity, that state of yoga, karma, sukhaushalam. When we have not reached that state of sthita pragya, that state of samadhi while we are doing work, till we have not reached those states, we can't say that we have reached immortality. So the first line, Isha Vasya Midam Sarvam, Yat Kincha Jagatyam Jagat. That the divine, he has become all this, he is the perfect, has become the imperfect, and then he has entered as the perfect inside it. This whole habitation is just right for the divine, right? Now let's proceed to the second line. Now all this is Jagatyam Jagat, in which the divine has entered. It is befitting for the divine. Tena tyaktena bhunjitha ma gridah kasya svidhanam. By that renounced, thou shouldest enjoy. Lust not after any man's possession. So, renunciation here implies offering back to the divine, whose it is originally. Now, this too is the bottom line of the Gita as we've already studied it. And this is the first pair of opposites, renounce and enjoy. All belongs to the divine. So don't lust after any other man's possession. When one becomes identified with the soul, with the self, then one experiences oneness with the entire becoming, with the entire manifestation. There is no other than. All is possessed by such a person. Now, the problem here comes with the word renunciation. And to prevent a misunderstanding, we must understand that renunciation word here, tena tyaktena, that tyaktena does not mean giving up works. On the contrary, it means to do the works, but after realizing that we have to do the works without desire. We have to do the works as an offering to the divine, do the works for the divine. Then, what does the Isha say? Tena tyaktena bhunjitha ma gridha kasya svidhanam. Then you can enjoy. You must enjoy. Enjoyment has not been written off by our Vedas. Enjoy karne mein koi galti nahi hai. One of the 4 important gods that surround and who are like protectors of the sun, not the physical sun, but the sun, which is the divine's will. Which are those 4 gods? Who knows over here? Who remembers the 4 gods who are the sentries around the sun god. Does anybody remember? No? We've done it in our spiritual retreat, but we'll do it again. So there is Varuna, Mitra, Aryaman, and Bhaga. These are the 4 gods who are the sentries. And once we have fulfilled these 4, we will be able to enter the divine's will. Which is the first one? Varuna. Varuna is when we become vaster. When I don't become a circle, a center which has a circumference around it. The circumference has disappeared. I am the center without a circumference. I have become as vast as the universe. Everybody is me, all are me. That is becoming Varuna, fulfilling Varuna. When we have become Varuna, then we can become Mitra. Mitra is when we have become vast, then we have become friendly with everybody. Varuna, Mitra, Aryaman, 3rd century. What is Aryaman? Aryaman is the god of effort, who puts in all his effort and does things as efficiently as it can be done. Aryaman. And the 4th god is Bhaga, enjoyment. There is nothing wrong in enjoying, so far as everything is done in the way the first verse tells us, Tena Tyaktena Bhunjita. Right? So, psychologically, a difficulty arises because when we want to renounce or give up something, we tend to become inactive. Acquisition, possession, enjoyment, relationships, these are our normal tendencies of action. And the moment we are told that we have to renounce, first of all, we think, now I can't acquire anything. I can't possess anything. I can't have a relationship. I can't enjoy anything, so I might as well become inactive. Now, this is a wrong idea, which has developed in many cultures, including India. So to give up responsibilities and come out of the mess of life. ये सब झंझटों में मेरे को पड़ना ही नहीं है. Wrong. Attain to a state where you are able to do all the works and let the work of the divine pass through you, because you are making an effort by continuously connecting yourself with the perfect inside and allowing the perfect to work through your outer channels. Right? So to prevent this misunderstanding, the Upanishad tells us that renunciation does not mean giving up the works. It means that we do the works. And in the second verse, he says, doing works like this, we should aspire to live for 100 years. This is the only path. And if we give up this path of action, then there is great difficulty. Mahati vinashti. And this Upanishad adds that when we act, we should not be afraid that our actions we will get stuck to the action. But the second verse says that when we act like this, then the action will not stick to us, right? We will not be stuck to any action. That limitation, that bondage will not happen to us, right? Normally, our actions create reactions, and that leads us to a further action. And in that kind of a circle, we go on action, reaction, action, reaction. But there is one kind of work that this Upanishad tells us that by doing the works like this, there will not be a reaction and you will not be in that mess, right? This is the meaning of the first verse. Isha vasya midam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat tyena tyaktena bhunjitha ma gridah kasya svidhanam. Now the second verse. Urvanne veha karmani jiji vishesha chatam samaha evam tvai nanyathe tosti na karma lipyate nare. Doing verily, doing verily works in this world, one should wish to live 100 years. Thus it is in thee, and not otherwise than this, action cleaves not to a man. Doing works and not by giving up works, right? Urvanne veha, the stress of the word eva gives the force here. Doing works indeed, eva, and not refraining from them, right? See, there is a, people feel that finally to ye sharir ko dust hi banna hai. But that is not. There's a beautiful poem, a Psalm of Life by Longfellow. Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art, to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. Longfellow. So, what the second verse is saying, that kurvanne ve akarmani, if by doing works in this way, the way the first verse has said, bondage does not happen to us. If the work is offered, the food we are eating is offered, our interactions are offered, our feelings are offered, they are renounced to the divine. I'm doing this for you. Let thy will be done. Let thy will be done. Then the action itself is finally experienced as if there is a power which is using me, doing everything through me. And then one sees that I am only an instrument of that power. One day that will happen to us. Thus it is thee and not otherwise than this. Action cleaves not to man. Clearly the Upanishad is saying, thus it is thee. When you do like this, not otherwise, then action cleaves not to man. The word cleaves here, used by Sri Aurobindo, means that the action does not stick to us. We are not bound by the action, right? Now, unfortunately, again, I'm having to talk about Adi Shankaraji, but we have to be able to understand. So Adi Shankaraji says, thus it is in thee and not otherwise than this. Now he interprets karmani. Karmani comes twice, in the first line and in the second line. So in the first line, when karmani comes, kurvanne veha karmani, jiji vishesha chatam samaha. So there, in the first line, he interprets karmani in the sense of Vedic sacrifices. And he says that those who are ignorant, those who cannot leave the world and go to the forest, those who will not become ascetics and monks, for them, kuch karm to karna hi padega. So for them, the Vedic sacrifices are a means of escaping from evil actions. Just like Adi Shankaraji explained Niyatam as those karm you are supposed to do, which are Vedic sacrifices. So that is the problem here. And in the second line, when karma comes, he uses the same karma in the opposite sense. And he says that this karma is for evil action, that you will be saved from evil action if you do karma, only those karma which are Vedic sacrifices. So the verse Adi Shankara tells us represents a concession to the ignorant people. The enlightened soul will abandon the world and he will go to the forest. And the whole expression and construction in his rendering becomes very forced and unnatural. And as you go further and further and further, more and more contradictions occur if you try and understand it in the light of Adi Shankara, right? We must be able to see very clearly what we need to take from Adi Shankaraji, what we need to leave in Adi Shankaraji, because he is fantastic. He has written unbelievable literature. He has done the most wonderful work till the age of 32. What he has managed, people can't do it for living by 100 years. So there is something fantastic. But some things of Adi Shankara, like his explanation of Maya and his telling people to go to the forest and become monks, these are things which we need to leave from Adi Shankara so that we come to the main text and are able to understand it in another manner. That is why the rendering that Sri Aurobindo has given seems more simple and gives a much more straightforward sense of the Upanishad. So we'll just go to the second verse once more. Kurvanne veha karmani jiji vishesha chatam samaha evam tvai nanyate te tosti na karma lipyate nare. Doing verily works in this world, one should wish to live 100 years. Thus it is in thee, and not otherwise than this, action cleaves not to a man. Has everybody understood? If everybody's understood the first and second verses, then we can move to the third. Any questions up till now? Thank you, Mona ma'am. Any questions up till now? Or is it very clear?
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, yes, Saransh.
Ma'am, like in the first verse, ma'am, it's Isha Vasimidam Sarvam. So, ma'am, it's same like it is told in Gita ki Vasudeva Sarvam. It's same.
Yes, that Vasudeva is everywhere.
Yes.
He's in the clod, in a lump of soil. He's in an insect. He's in the one who's doing jua, who's gambling. He's in the evil. He's in the good. He's everywhere.
Yes.
Right? Very good. Thank you, Saraj. Any other questions in the first and second? Then we will move to the third.
Ma'am, can you explain, ma'am, the word verily, doing verily work?
Verily means there is an insistence upon it. Verily, indeed. Thus it is in the indeed. If you do works like this, like the first verse is saying, then you wish to live 100 years. उसके ऊपर force दिया जा रहा है. Thus it is in the verily. ठीक है? हाँ.
मैम यहाँ पर जैसे है सेकंड वर्स में,
हाँ जी.
सेकंड मंत्र में कुर्वन्ने वेहि कर्माणि, तो कुर्वन का एक्चुअली संस्कृत में होता है अर्थ करते हुए.
हाँ जी.
और पहले मंत्र में आया है तेन त्यक्तेन भुंजीथा, लास्ट लाइन. तो क्या तेन त्यक्तेन कुर्वन ऐसा भाव है यहाँ पर?
पहले वर्स में ये है कि जो भी कर्म कर रहे हैं उनको ईश्वर को ऑफर करके, उनको उसमें इनवाइट करके जब हम करेंगे तो हम उस कर्म को एंजॉय कर सकते हैं. और सेकंड वर्स में दिया है कि एंजॉय करेंगे और ये हमारे को बॉन्डेज, ये हमें कर्म बंधन में नहीं डालेगा. जो कर्म हमने ईश्वर को ऑफर करके किया, अगर हम ऐसे ही सारे कर्म करते रहे तो वो कर्म हमारा बंधन नहीं बनेगा. जो बोलते हैं ना गठरी बन. हाँ जी
मैम, वो एकदम सही है कि इसीलिए तो कहा जाता है कि हम कोई भी कर्म, चाहे किसी भी तरह का कर्म करें, तो उस परम चेतना से लिंक होकर के करते हैं या परम चेतना का कर्म मान करके करते हैं. हम ऐसा कोई कर्म नहीं करते हैं जो उस परम चेतना के लिए नहीं होता. हम ऑफरिंग करते हैं, हम कोई भी काम करते हैं, इसीलिए हम भोजन करते हैं तो सबसे पहले त्वदीयम वस्तु गोविंद तुभ्यमेव समर्पये, इस तरह की भावना से ही हम करते हैं. या कोई भी कर्म करते हैं तो यहाँ पर मतलब हमारा ऐसा मानना है कि जो त्याग की भावना हमारे अंदर पहले मंत्र में हमें बताई है, वो करते हुए हम ऐसा करें. जिजी विषेद समम समाह, ऐसा मतलब हमारा अपना मानना.
जो आपका मानना है वही मेरा मानना है कि जो भी कर्म कर रहे हैं वो ईश्वर को अर्पण करके तेन त्यक्तेन भुंजिता, और ऑफर करने के बाद में उसको एंजॉय करना अलाउड है.
हाँ, अलाउड.
लोग सोचते हैं कि एंजॉयमेंट अलाउड नहीं है.
उसका उपभोग करने का पूरा अधिकार हमें उस परम चेतना ने दिया है.
पर तभी जब हम उसको रिनाउंस कर चुके हैं, ऑफर कर चुके हैं.
कंडीशन
और ये हम नहीं कह सकते हैं सर कि सारे कर्म ईश्वर कर रहा है. हम ये कर्म ईश्वर के लिए कर रहे हैं. अभी हम उस स्थिति में नहीं पहुंचे हैं कि हम कह सकते हैं कि ईश्वर हमारे थ्रू सारे कर्म कर रहा है. फिर तो हम गलत कर्म करेंगे तो भी बोलेंगे नहीं नहीं, सब ईश्वर कर रहा है. गॉड गिव्स अस सैंक्शन, इट इज नॉट हिज विल. विल और सैंक्शन हम लोगों ने कई बार हर स्पिरिचुअल रिट्रीट में क्लियरली उन दोनों के बीच का डिफरेंस समझाया है. कि एक होता है कि ईश्वर का कर्म हो रहा है हमारे थ्रू, एक होता है ईश्वर ने अलाउ कर दिया ये कर्म. ठीक है ना? थैंक यू सर. एनी अदर क्वेश्चंस? अदरवाइज देन वी मूव टू द थर्ड वर्स. असूर्य नाम ते लोका अंधेन तमसा वृताः तांस्ते प्रेत्याभिगच्छन्ति ये के चात्महनो जनाः. Sunless are those worlds and enveloped in blind gloom, whereto all they in their passing hence resort who are slayers of their souls. Sunless are those worlds, slayers of their soul. Now, whoever does not do works like this, जैसा कि पहले वर्स में बताया है, वैसा जो भी काम नहीं करता है, because वो क्या करता है? वो अपने सोल के साथ कनेक्ट नहीं करता है. What is the purpose of the soul? The purpose of the soul to come on this earth is that I am invited. The soul says, let me be invited into this physical being, into this emotional being, जो भाव जगत है, into this mental being, so that I can help them to progress, so that I can help them to progress, to flower, to blossom, to evolve. then the soul is able to grow. The soul is already perfect, but the soul needs to make the body, the emotional being and the mental being perfect. But how can it do that? Unless the mental being offers itself to the soul in whatever it is thinking and planning. Unless the vital being invites the soul in all its emotional drama that it goes through in life, anger, jealousy, feeling of hatred, feeling of love, feeling of expansion, feeling of contraction. हर चीज में जब तक वो सोल को इनवाइट नहीं करेगा, तब तक वो इमोशनल फील जो है हमारा, वो प्रोग्रेस कैसे करेगा? उसको लाइट चाहिए ना, अंधेरे में कैसे रहेगा? राइट? सो दोज हु डू नॉट डू सर्वाणि कर्माणि, सारे कर्मों में जो सोल को आगे नहीं बुलाता है, दे बिकम स्लेयर्स ऑफ द सोल. व्हाट आर द वर्ड्स? असूर्या नामते लोका अंधेन तमसावृता तांसे प्रेत्याभिगच्छन्ति ये के चात्महनो जना. Sunless are those worlds and enveloped in blind gloom. Where to? कौन जाते हैं? Who go there? All they in their passing hence resort to, who are slayers of their soul. अभी जो असूर्या वर्ड है ना, पहले उसको कुछ लोगों ने नहीं समझा तो बोल दिया असूर्या माने असुर से आया है, टाइटैनिक, अनडिवाइन, असुर. बट नहीं, असूर्या मीन्स that which is sunless. In the Isha Upanishad, in the 9th and 12th verses, the sun and the sunless worlds have been mentioned. Again, in the last 4 verses, Hiranmayena Patrena, 15th, 16th verses have again mention of the sun. The prayer to the sun refers back in thought to the sunless worlds, where there is no light, where one is living in blind gloom. These are recalled again and again in this Isha Upanishad. The sun and his rays are intimately connected in other Upanishads also. Those worlds of light are referred to again and again. And their natural opposite is the Titanic worlds, the worlds where there is no sun, which are sunless. What does sunless mean? It means the world where there is darkness, where there is ignorance, where there is tamas, right? So, this is the real bearing of the entire Upanishad. All the rest of the Upanishad is a kind of elucidation of this. It is like a scientist who has trodden all the paths, who has gone through all the paths of life, experimented upon everything, and has come to the conclusion that there is only one path. All the other paths lead to gloom, lead to darkness. And after death, such people go to these sunless worlds, go to these dark worlds. So if we ever want to come out of the darkness, which one day we all want to, then this is the only path. This is the art and science of life. So this verse tells us, and I'm repeating myself, that if we do not practice this art of life, then we become hurters of our soul. The moment we try to possess our actions or possess something, this I'm doing for myself, this I will do for myself, who do actions for themselves, they begin to hurt their soul because it is contrary to the reality. And those who hurt their soul after life, after death, they pass on to these dark, sunless worlds. And they can never come out unless they learn this art of life. It says very, very clearly that there is no other way. If we do not follow this path, we will go into the world of darkness. This is a declaration made by the Upanishad. And it gives a very simple rule of divine life in a very, very simple manner. Let's just go through the 3rd verse once more, ma'am. Asurya nama te loka andhena tamasa vritaha tamste pretyabhigachanti ye ke chatmahano jana. Sunless are those worlds and enveloped in blind gloom, whereto all they in their passing hence resort, who are slayers of their souls. Let's do a summing up of all the three verses, the last reference. So we'll just do a summing up. In the first verse, a basis is laid down that the one stable spirit inhabits and governs the universe of all movements. The rule for a divine life is founded on the basis of enjoyment of all, enjoyment of everything. In what manner? By the offering or renunciation of all. The second verse says that by doing works like this, one must aspire to live 100 years. Only works done like this will not lead to bondage. Na karma lipyate nare. The third verse says that they who are slayers of their soul, who do not do desireless actions which are offered, which are renounced to the Lord, they enter into dark, sunless worlds after leaving their body. Thank you. Any questions from anybody?
I'm just wondering, see, in the earlier times when the rishis were there during the Satyug and the Treta Yuga, at that time, were people aware about this? Like the common man, that everything has to be offered and then only one should I mean, were these things known to everybody?
Not necessary at all. There were people who knew, and there were people who were leading their ordinary life. We know the story of the Dhobi who was speaking the way he was speaking in Sri Ram's time. There were all kinds of people. Evolution is going on at a very, very slow and gradual pace. It is going on.
No, but to this point, this is such an important aspect of life. That means only if somebody who reads the Upanishad will be aware of this.
But there are grades and grades of evolution. No? There are stages and stages. And it's a very, very gradual evolution that's taking place. It's taken thousands of centuries before the clod evolved into vegetation. Thousands of centuries.
शास्त्रार्थ तो होते थे और लोग सुनते थे.
हाँ, but लोग सुनते थे, but still क्या सारे के सारे totally evolved थे? नहीं थे. People were अष्टावक्र जी के फादर का क्या किया गया था? अगर आप शास्त्रार्थ में हार गए तो आपको अपने जीवन गंवाना पड़ेगा. Was that right?
No.
Was that right? That was not
No.
right.
No.
शास्त्र को शस्त्र मत बनाओ.
हाँ, शास्त्र को शस्त्र मत बनाओ, but बनता था. The evolution is a very gradual process. Thousands of centuries लगे जब vegetation से एक insect निकला, एक fish निकली, फिर एक tortoise निकला. माने हमारे जो ये सारे gods हैं, they are all different levels of avatar जो हैं, all different levels of evolution. Every avatar took evolution to the next level and the next level and the next level.
So that means the Kali Yuga has been the best. At least we are getting to know more than we were knowing before.
Here, every next stage is better than the earlier one, na? Because evolution has taken place a little more.
मेरे को एक प्रश्न पूछना था ये कि मेरे पास ईशोपनिषद प्रभुपाद जी का, तो वो मैंने कहा कि चलो मेरे को रेफरेंस के लिए मैं निकाल के रखती हूँ सामने. बट इसमें जो थर्ड वाला मंत्र है उसमें असुरिया का मीनिंग असुरों के निमित्त लिखा है. आई एम लिटिल कंफ्यूज, तो उसको फिर से जरा क्लियर कर.
So असुरिया is very heavily linked to सूर्य, कि जहाँ सूर्य नहीं है, जहाँ लाइट नहीं है, ऐसे वर्ल्ड्स में इंसान जाएगा who is not doing renunciation and action, desireless action which has been renounced. And जब वो नॉलेज एंड इग्नोरेंस के जो 3 वर्सेस आते हैं उसमें भी आता है कि असुर्य माने असुर्य वाले वर्ल्ड्स में जाएंगे, ये भी. फिर वैसे ही जब एक बार और आता है और लास्ट में हिरण्मयेन पात्रेण सत्यस्य अपिहितं मुखम तत्त्वं पूषन् न पावृणु सत्य धर्माय निश्चये. तो माने फिर सूर्य आता है कि सूर्य इज द हाईएस्ट एंड सूर्य इज नॉट दिस फिजिकल सूर्य. सूर्य इज अ सिंबल. इट इज अ सिंबल ऑफ द डिवाइन्स विल. ईश्वर का संकल्प क्या है, वही दैट इज द डिवाइन्स विल एंड दैट इज द हाईएस्ट. और वहां पहुंचने के लिए जिससे कि वो डिवाइन की विल हमारे थ्रू निकले, हमारे को इंस्ट्रूमेंट बना दे ईश्वर, अपनी बांसुरी बना ले और उनकी विल हमारे थ्रू निकले, उसके लिए ये सारा काम हमें करना पड़ता है कि हम उनके लायक बन जाए, हम इस फिजिकल बीइंग को इतना हेल्दी, इतना साउंड, इतना परफेक्ट बना दें, हमारी इमोशनल बीइंग में इतना लव, वननेस, यूनिटी, स्वीटनेस को भर दें, हमारे मेंटल बीइंग में इतनी क्लैरिटी आए, क्लैरिटी क्लैरिटी क्लैरिटी, कि हम ईश्वर को समझ सके, हाउ मच इज देयर एवरीवेयर. इसलिए दैट सूर्य represents the divine's very. Asurya is not to be taken as asur, but you can also take it in that manner कि जहाँ अंधेरा है वहाँ असुर है, उस ढंग से आपको लेना है तो आप ले सकते हैं. But it actually means asurya, माने जहाँ सूर्य नहीं है, जहाँ सूर्य का प्रकाश नहीं है, जहाँ नॉलेज नहीं है और इग्नोरेंस है. ठीक है चाची जी?
You said कि सब कर्म जैसे ठाकुर को अर्पण करके करना. By that, what do you mean? That each and everything we are doing throughout the day, or what do you mean by that?
Yes, each and everything that we are doing throughout the day, including when we are fighting with our husband, including
Okay.
when we are getting angry on the people who are helping us, who are working for us, our caretakers, all the negative and dark things, all the good things, all the time remembering Thakur ji and saying, "ये मैं आपके लिए कर रही हूँ."
Even while doing the household chores and everything, then
Yes.
also we should.
Yes, because the more we invite him outside, तो
Hmm.
हमारा बाहर के जो कर्म है वो खूबसूरत होते चले जाएंगे, ईश्वरीय होने के रास्ते में हो जाएंगे. ईश्वरीय होने में तो बहुत टाइम लगेगा हम सबको.
That is true.
Let us just thank God, just half a minute.